And welcome back to the Sandton Convention Centre. This is, of course, where the 15th BRICS Summit is taking place. And just wading through a myriad of issues that we have been listening to and also discussing in terms of what is important. But, of course, there's also that matter of an election north of the border in Zimbabwe today. And our next guest will talk to us about that slightly, and also about just the processing of people coming into South Africa for the BRICS Summit. So we joined now by the Home Affairs Border Management Authority Commissioner, Dr. Mike Masiapato, and he'll explain to us, because this Home Affairs attachment of the Border Management Authority, I know that many of us think of it as such, but there have been some changes, and Dr. Masiapato will explain that to us. Doctor, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
No, thank you very much, Sakina.
Let's start with the elections up in Zimbabwe, and I wanted to establish from you, as the Border Management Authority Commissioner, whether we've seen an increase in numbers of people crossing the border to go and participate in the elections in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, no, thank you very much again. Basically, what we did is from the weekend, we basically, put our systems ready to be able to handle the numbers of the Zimbabweans that we anticipated that were supposed to be going back home to vote. But in terms of our observations from over the weekend, even up to now, we didn't necessarily see any serious spike, particularly in terms of the Beitbridge port of entry, as it were. Under normal circumstances, we manage around 5,000 or so people as they cross out of South Africa, but also mainly coming into the Republic in Musina to buy some goods and then be able to exit back into Zimbabwe. So that particular trend has not necessarily demonstrated much of a significant difference. However, in terms of maybe the people who might be outside just South Africa, they might probably be flying into the country for that purpose. But in terms of the land port, Beitbridge in particular, we didn't see much spike, as it were.
And that's interesting because, as you said, you had put your systems in place to cater for a potential spike, and it didn't happen. Even last night, because, one would have thought maybe if people missed the opportunity over the weekend, they would make a last-minute dash for it, try to get across the border last night.
Yeah, no, indeed. When I spoke to the port commander this morning, who is stationed in Beitbridge, she did confirm that indeed, even overnight, they did not see much spike or anything different in terms of the normal trends. And also this morning, as we speak, still the situation is as normal, and they didn't see much of a difference. Very
interesting. But coming back to BRICS, and of course, we have more than 40 heads of state coming into the country, representatives from all of those nations, including the BRICS nations and their heads of state. How has this been for the Border Management Authority? Because one would imagine it's quite an intense undertaking.
Yeah, so indeed, by the way, this was the first test for the Border Management Authority after we have integrated the staff from the four government departments, being Home Affairs, Environmental, Health and Agriculture. We have integrated all of them, and we have started functioning from the 1st of April as a Schedule 3A public entity. So this BRICS Summit was indeed a first test for us in terms of our ability to manage and actually facilitate the people movement into the Republic. But in this instance, obviously, as the broader security cluster, we actually were working together with our colleagues from the night joints in terms of the preparations. But from a Border Management Authority point of view, our responsibility has been to make sure that as the people come through, we had to process them in terms of the immigration laws, that is the issues of the passports, the issues of the visa, where visas are required, but also making sure that as they come through, they get scanned in terms of health related, to make sure that indeed they don't bring undesirable diseases into the Republic. But similarly, in terms of agriculture, whatever they're carrying that has some agricultural related, we had to make sure that everything goes according to plan, including protecting the country from biosecurity. So I will say that everything has went well. We were able to manage and administrate all of the people as they came through. As you will be aware, in terms of the heads of state, we do have special arrangements that they're able to then come through. We were using 3 international airports in particular. Is OR Tambo, we then used Lanseria International Airport, and we also used Waterkloof Air Force Base for the purposes of some of the heads of state. So as we speak, we're able to administrate all of them into the Republic, and they are here and everything is going according to plan.
Were there any glitches? Were there any people whom you had to deny entry?
Yeah, you see, if you look at the majority of the people who were coming for the summit, most of those people were in a way technocrats, mostly ministers, head of state, delegations and all. Most of those people were fairly your government employees from those respective countries as it were. So what we did as part of our preparation was to make sure that through the embassies in the Republic and the embassies of those countries, we are able to communicate back into the countries in question in terms of the requirements for entering the Republic. And most of those people are using official passports as well as diplomatic passports. So in terms of the administration of those, it has been very seamless and everything went according to plan. But additional to that, we have also administrated around 1,800 journalists who actually came from all over the world who were coming to cover the event. But even with those ones, there hasn't been any issue in terms of any challenge, as it were. Maybe the last thing to indicate, Sakina, is that you will be aware that we have something called Advanced Passenger Processing System that we are fairly using very effectively, which means that each and every person trying to enter into the aircraft from anywhere in the world, we get the passenger manifest as the Border Management Authority working with Home Affairs, and we are able to assess them and make sure that indeed they are not wanted by Interpol, or they don't have any criminal related issues, or they are actually not necessarily barred from entering the Republic. So on that basis, we manage them effectively even before they board the aircraft. When they land here, it becomes seamless.
So all the people, no problems, everybody processed in time, and nobody had to be turned away. What about goods? Anything confiscated?
Yeah, so even up to this point, I can confirm that indeed we didn't have any of the challenge. And like I've said, one of the reasons for that is because people already knew what are the kind of things they can bring in the Republic and what are the kind of things that are not going to be accepted into the Republic, particularly from an agricultural products point of view. So on that basis, everybody complied, and there hasn't been any denials per se that we have seen over the period.
So your job has been fairly easy?
Yeah, no, I will say the job has been fairly easy because of the nature of the summit. But if it was, for example, let's say we're administrating ordinary people coming for some sports events, indeed, in those instances, it becomes very much different. Because most of the time, you will find that people will bring in things that will not necessarily be allowed in the country. I mean, as you will know, even in other jurisdictions, you just take a biltong as an example. You try to enter into a country with a biltong, they will tell you it is not allowed, and therefore it gets confiscated. But in this instance, it was very easy, primarily because of the nature of the people that we had to deal with.
And just a final question with regard to the Border Management Authority. And, previously one would imagine you would have Home Affairs doing their bit, the Department of Agriculture looking at the biohazard nature of things. So what does the Border Management Authority do differently compared to what was usually the case?
So basically what we have done, if you can just note from 1994, we actually inherited a multi-agency border management approach, where you will find that all the departments, they send officials at the port to basically do border management functions. So effectively, if you were to go into OR Tambo as an example, before the 1st of April, you'll find a situation where there are something like 7 port managers, each one of them coming from the respective departments, trying to implement their laws. So that model of working is very much problematic. So what Border Management Authority is doing is, we came into the environment and we took over those particular functions from a border law enforcement point of view. The departments therefore get detached out of the port of entry environment. They actually retain their policy-making responsibilities and their law-making responsibilities. But when it comes to the actual implementation of border laws, it is the exclusive mandate of the Border Management Authority. So we implement immigration laws on behalf of Home Affairs, same with agriculture, same with environmental, and same with health. So that is basically the essence. So as we speak now, having started operating officially from the 1st of April, we are reporting to all of the DGs or the Directors General for this department. We report on a quarterly basis in terms of the work we do on the ground on their behalf. But at the same time, this department, they still do have the mandate to come and do inspections on the ground to make sure that we are implementing their laws according to their prescripts. And that's how it is.
Very interesting. So the changes effective from the 1st of April, as you heard there from Dr. Mike Masiapato, Commissioner at the Border Management Authority. This was their first big test in terms of a big event like this, where they've had to process people coming into the country. But as he said, fairly plain sailing, because of course dealing with diplomats and not too much to be worried about. Nothing confiscated, nobody turned away, 1,800 journalists among all of us. So this is what the Border Management Authority has had to deal with so far. Let's take it back to studio.